Hashem, Shem Egan Shir Torah. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's shir from Harv Yaakov Zev Smith on Unavoidable Shabbos Boyer questions. I'd like to give a big yasher koyach to the sponsors of today's shir. Today's shir is sponsored by Mr. Avram Shuchatovitz, the Nishmas Imoy, Yeshua Din and Basar Beisvul Hasholem, Yeshua Chof Beis Teves, and Nishmosel Tzura B'Tzura Chaim. Today's shir is sponsored by Mr. Yitzchak Sternley, the Nishmas Ova, Rabbi Chiel Tzviber, and Moshe Ari Alevi, Hasholem, Yeshua Chof Teves, and Nishmosel Tzura B'Tzura Chaim. Got the great schus of sponsoring a shir call, Irgun Shir Torah at 718-851-8651, email ist@yeshivanet.com. Harav Smith.
What would you say to the following question? Someone had a pile of clean laundry in a basket, and there was different type of clothing. There was socks and undergarments and shirts, and obviously there wasn't the problem of achana, but he wanted to put it away till the covered Shabbos. But it's a real boira. You have so many different types of clothing, all mixed up. It's very much a teruvais. So he had an eitzah. He's not going to select. He takes one at a time, folds it up, and puts it away. And he felt that maybe that's not boira because he's not selecting anything particularly. He's using what's called kala baliyada. He's taking one and putting it away. Question number 2, where someone had soup, a lot of leftover soup, and they didn't want to save it. Someone had started it, so he spilled it into the sink, and he hoped the soup went down, and the vegetables and the laksha remains in the strainer, and then he'll throw that out. He doesn't want to throw it in the garbage because then it's going to leak. Problem, of course, is that you're using a sink strainer, which is a kli boira. Isn't that a question of boira? And the third question is someone had a whole bunch of different keys. Now, if you take the key you need now to use now, it's okay. But he was going to take a key for later. So he had a brainstorm. He'll take all the keys and throw it on a table, scatter out the keys. So now each key is separate. No, if it's not a taruvais, if it's not mixed up, there's no boyer. So the question is, can he scatter a taruvais and then take what he wants even for later? Because if the assumption is that there's no taruvais, there's no issa, he might be right, or maybe throwing is the issa. So as we'll see, this and probably 20 more questions are part of today's fabulous sugya. As you'll see, it's a beautiful sugya. The common denominator, it's not the simple boira of taking the psoilis from the yoichel. It's not like the Mishkan where you had samamonim or you had kernels of wheat. You take out there's the stones, you take out the psoilis. This is actually a different form. Either you're scattering it or you're taking one at a time. But I think to come to a clarity, we'll try to reduce all our shalos into one simple question. Is the Issa Boira the Maisa Boira of selecting, of sorting? Or maybe the Issa Boira is the end result, the Teitzah, that you end up with everything separate. As long as everything is separate, that's the Issa of Boira. Now, this is not at all splitting it here, as we'll see. The nafkamin is the rest of the shir. Because in a regular case of Boira, you do both. You take out the psoilis, you take out the stones, and now you have the wheat. So you have a Maisa Boira, and you have the end result. But let's think, for example, scattering. You take a whole bunch of keys, a real taruvais, a real boira situation, and you throw it on the table. So you didn't do a Maisa Boira. Throwing is not a Maisa Boira. But the end result, it's all Mavura. And the rest of the questions we'll leave the dispense as we proceed. But Daik V'Tishkach, it's all totally in this simple shayla. Now let's make it a little more gishmak. The question is much better than it sounds, and it needs a good teretz. We know to be a malacha deraisa, there has to be a malacha hatzricha legufa. There has to be a positive benefit. If a person carries garbage out of his house to get it out of his house, that's an issa d'Rabbanan. It's not a tzah. Why? Because you have to have a positive benefit that has to be constructive and not hoylech le'ibud. Question. We said boira is taking the psoilis from the oichel. What are you doing with the psoilis? You're tossing it in the garbage. So every boira by definition is hoylech le'ibud. And every boira by definition should be a malachas and tzricha legufa. But it can't be, because boira is one of lamates malachas. So the kasha is very good, but the teretz is even more pashut. And that is we're making a mistake. The issa of boira is not taking out the psoilus per se. The issa, as the Yeshuas Yaakov in the beginning of our Simon Shin Yutes says, the issa of boira is tikkun oichel. Let's say you have a cluster of grapes, and there are a few rotten grapes. You don't want to serve it with rotten grapes. So you have two choices. You could take the good from the bad, take off the good grape. That would be derech achila zok the Rav Shulchan Aruch. You're eating. But let's say you first take out all the rotten grapes. The issa is not taking out the rotten grapes. The issa is being misaken the good grapes. So zok the Yeshuas Yaakov, and really Rashi, as you'll see, Kuflan Batesa Medbeis, the Levush and Sif Test points it out. Rashi also says the issa of boira is tikkun oichel. Tikkun oichel is very much a malacha hatzricha legufa. I'll give you a fantastic mashal. If someone with Chalila would do Mila on Shabbos, a Mila Shalei Bizmana, either too early or too late. The question is, what do you mean, Issa Deraisa? He's not using the blood or the orla. So why is it a Malacha Deraisa? Teretz says he's misakin the child. From an oral, he becomes a mohul. That is the Issa of Boira in two words, Tikkun Oichel. Now we can understand, which is one of the basic Yisaidis of Hilchas Boira, that even though Boira is a Malacha Deraisa, but if you have the three preconditions, then Boira is perfectly mutter. And I'll make it easier to remember. Ayol Mishulish. Ayol is the Rashi Tevis of the three preconditions. So the Ayol Mishulish is the Heta. Ayol, Aleph, is you take the Oichel from the Psoilus. You want to eat grapes? Gesundheit. Take the good grapes and ask Gesundheit. But don't take out the rotten grapes. Yud is Yad, don't use a Keli. We'll soon see there's a special Issa of using a Keli. For example, using the sink strainer that you have on the sink to separate the copepods from the water. So even though you're taking the good and you want to drink the water right away, according to many poskim, that's boira. Why is it boira? Because you're using a keli. You have that easy filter. You have that strainer. So even if you're taking the good, don't use a keli. So you have to have oichel and yad. And maybe most important, it's la'alta. Zok de Rav, beautiful explanation of the whole sugya, because the heta of the issa is tikkun oichel. When it's a derech achila, it's not a tikkun oichel, you're eating. The Torah allows you to eat grapes, but do it right. Zok de Rav, therefore you could understand the three Tanoim. If you take the oichel from the psoilus, you're taking the good grapes, that's derech achila. You're taking the psoilus and the oichel, why? Oh, you want to perfect the oichel. That's boira. You're using a keli, or you want it to be a much better type of boira, that's also. And most avi is zok de Rav, if you're taking it to use later, then it can't be derech achila. You're not eating. You're doing it for later. So this is the challenge of boira, you should know. Either it's mutter gomer, or it's chayev chas v'shalom. I don't want to say what, but and Re'ez Apella, you'll look in Shulchan Aruch Hilchos Shabbos, you'll come to the conclusion that the roiv of Hilchos Shabbos for us are the Rabbanans. No one's Mechal Shabbos with Bishul. Mechzikim Avashal Chazara, carrying in most cities, not a deraisa. You can go through the Gans Hilchos Boira, Gans Hilchos Shabbos, the majority are not deraisas. You'll find by Boira, you don't find by any other malacha. The first 5 seifim, the Mechaber says either it's mutter or chayiv. One after the other, 5 seifim of chayiv. That's the challenge of Boira. Either it's mutter or chasham chayiv. And that's why the Mr. Bura quotes the famous Yaris Tavash, the Rebbe Yonason, that it's impossible to keep Shabbos if you don't learn Hilchos Shabbos. And the example he gives is, you have to learn Hilchos Boira. So basically, we have the following, that Tikkun Oichel is the Issa Boira, Derech Achila Ayol is the Heta. Now, before we go further, I want to make 2 points that are obvious, but it's good to mention. If someone has different items on a table, but they're not together, they're scattered, there's no Issa Boira. Why not? Because the Aleph of Boira has to be a Taruvais. If it's not mixed up, if it's not a few things mixed up, it's not a boira. And we'll soon give examples. But today's discussion, when we have a taruvais, if there's no boira, there's no boira. And also, min echad, all the same, there's no boira. Even though some are bigger, some are smaller. A bigger challah, a smaller challah, that's min echad, and min echad there's no boira. So we're talking about a boira situation, taruvais and min echad. Okay. Now let us try to apply this more specifically. What's the halacha with our question? A person has a taruvais, many minim, but he doesn't select, he doesn't sort, he throws it on the table, and now it's no more taruvais. So this seems to be a Farish Gemara. In Shabbos Tafayin Dalid, Rav Bibi was serving the Talmidei Chachamim, and as Rashi explains, he had a basket with peiros, different peiros, and he was worried about boira. So what did he do? He took the basket and threw it, I guess in a respectful way, in front of the Talmidei Chachamim, and the fruit scattered, and each person took their own. Zok Rashi, he was worried about boira, but b'shituach hazeh, we'll use the word pizur, where by scattering it, nifrash ha'oichel me'elav, he didn't do a ma'aser boira, it happened on its own, and therefore it was mutter. Now wait a second. You told me he started with a taruvais. He ended up with a non-taruvais. Why isn't it also the actual pizur of scattering? Evidently, the issa boira is not the toitzah. You have to have a ma'aser boira. And that's why Rav Moshe and Chelik Dalet, Seminayin Dalet, the Shmir Shabbos, and Rav Sternberg and the Har Tzvi, a whole group of poskim will say, based on this Gemara, that the issa is doing a ma'aser boira. Scattering, pizur, is not a ma'aser boira. If you look at the Ritva, the Ran, the Marshan, that Gemara, they all say, really Rashi says it, Umishtuza and nifrash ha'oichel me'elav. Scattering a mixture is not a ma'aser boira. You have a taitzah, so you're lucky. But without a ma'aser boira, it can't be teruvos. So the chayr is exactly what we're looking for. Pizur, scattering, is not a ma'aser boira, and it's mutter. I wish it would be as simple as it seems, but Rabbi Yashiv, quoted in the Sefer Ayal Meshulash Amid Kuf Mem Aleph, he held that scattering could be boira deraisa, because of the teitzah. How do you learn the Gemara about Rav Bibi? He says, Pashit. He was throwing the fruit, the taruvais, in front of the Talmidei Chacham to eat it. For them, and for him, it was ayil. Eichel yad la'alt. He wasn't using a keli. So the heter was derech achila. So our simple question is not as simple as we would like it to be, but we could definitely say that Rav Paiskim, and that's where we're going to go, that pizur of a taruvais is mutter. Rabbi Yashiv obviously either held that pizur is a ma'aser boira, or he held that taitzah. But we're comfortable to say Rav Paiskim hold it's mutter, because we establish the following yesod that pizur is not a ma'aser boira and is mutter. Okay, now let's move on. Let's say a person is making a simcha and he gets back a lot of trays of cake. You know, part of the Seidas Habriya, you have more leftovers than the cake you started with. Somehow, Baruch Hashem, there's always a lot of leftovers. So someone did him a favor and took all the cake and put it into one of these cake trays. So now he has 50 pieces of different cakes. Mamsinish good. Different, all mixed up. So he doesn't want, he can't put that big box in the refrigerator, the freezer. So he has an eitzah. He's going to take first all the layer cake and put it in one bag. Then he'll take the roll cake, and before long, all the cake is in its own bags, and he'll put it in the freezer, machaya. Question, what are you doing? Why isn't that boira? You're not eating it. So he had a very interesting line of defense. Boira is when you have oichel and psoilus. Here, it's both oichel. Same question, you have pieces of games, and you want to put it away for next time. So it's all oichel. What's the problem? You know, what I was saying, a new type of heter, it's not a ma'aser boira. Now, let me be clear. Let's say you're a Baal Simcha, and you have a tray of cake. And it's fine. But the problem is, someone just, which happens unfortunately, took a bite of it and put it back. Or cracked it in half, or dropped a piece of herring on the tray. And you can't serve guests, something that's not appealing. So you take out the half-bitten cake or the piece of herring. That I understand is a ma'aser boira, because the half-bitten cake is a psoilus. But our box of cake is all edible, all oichel. Maybe we're going to assume 2 oichlin is not psoilus and not boira. And indeed, the Pri Megadim in Mishples of Sif Cotton Bays seems to say that. He says that if you have 2 oichlin, one now and one later, that's taka psoilus, because the one you want now is the oichel, the other one you don't want. Or oichel and psoilus. But zog the Pri Megadim, hashneim la'achas man, shari, the high oichel, v'hai psoilus. Now he does say tzarachin ladina, but he has at least the tzarachin, maybe 2 oichel for later, it would not be awesome. However, for us, this is very hard to accept. Because l'chayra, this has all the chesroinus. Taking cake from mixed up cake is a ma'aser boira, no? Isn't that? You're separating. You're looking for dafka, this cake and that cake. And once you finish, you have a real teitzah. What's the teitzah? Later you could use the layer cake and the cream cake. So how could it be mutter? You have a ma'aser boira, you have a teitzah. You have a technicality that is 2 oichel, so what? And indeed, the Bi'alacha in Sif Gimel, the Mas Hayulafonov, he says the Pri Megadim is mistapik, but it can't be a suffix. This is a regular ma'aser boira. But he adds something very beautiful. And he says that this Sif Tezvav, the Mechaber discusses someone that has, before Shabbos, he set up chardal, mustard, that it should ooze out, and it should become mustard. But part of the way of making, I never made mustard, but you take you crack an egg, a raw egg, you put it onto the mustard, and that sort of makes it work better. So the halacha is, the Shulchan Aruch, the Poskim all say, if you crack an egg and take the yolk because you want to put it into your milk, that was their artificial milk. So that's okay because it's boira, you're taking the good from the bad. But if you take out the white, that's boira, because yolk and white are 2 minim. So why does the Mechaber say on Shabbos you're allowed to put this egg into a mesanenes where the chardal is? You're separating 2 minim with the kli boira. Why isn't that boira deraisa? So to be halacha, you know why it's not a boira deraisa? Because both the yolk and the white are going li'ibud. So there's no ma'aser, there's no tikkun, there's no teitzah. But our case, you're separating 2 oichlin. It's a wonderful tikkun. Now you have separate layer cake and separate roll cake. So this is why the Poskim very strongly reject the Pri Megadim Mustafik. Remember, the Pri Megadim wrote Tzarachin Ladina. And halacha we're going to say, the next chiddush that we have, actually there's probably a new word, miyun, not with an aleph, mem yud vav nun, means selecting, like lashon of min. Miyun, if you take out all the layer cake and then all the roll cake, is boira. Why? Even though there's no psoilus, but you're doing a ma'aser boira of selecting, and the end result, there is a wonderful tikkun. And the last of our questions, and then we'll apply it more specifically, is a question we began with the basket of laundry. A real teruvais, very different type of clothing. So to take out all the socks and then all the shirts, that's me and that's us. But here we have a better alternative. I'm going to pick up one at a time. I'm not going to even look what it is. I'll take it out and I'll put it in its place. Maybe the issa of boira is selecting, sorting. When I'm looking for something, I'm looking for the roll cake, or I'm looking dafka for a sack. That's boira. But if I do what's called kol habol yadai, or in English, I'm taking randomly, I'm not selecting, I'm not sorting. Maybe the issa boira is choosing, selecting, or sorting, which I'm not doing. It's kol habol yadai. Or maybe the issa is separating. Random separation is also wasa. So let me add a little more gishmak, and then we'll see how this suffix really is a very beautiful suffix. Let's say a mother wants to make a child snack for Shabbos morning, so the child will go to shul, and she could sleep late. if he wakes her up, I need a snack, she can't sleep late. So Friday night, she prepares the snack. So he could go to shul and she sleeps late. Fine. To peel an orange Friday night for the child is bar deraisa. Why? It's not allowed to. To take out one piece of cake from a taruvais of different types of cakes is also bar. Why? It's not allowed to. But let's say the child is a moifas of a child. He doesn't care. Any cake is good. As long as he has a snack, he doesn't care what. Can the mother take kolabola yoda Friday night, put it in a bag, and leave it for the child's snack? The answer is yes. Why? Because it's not a teruvais. And once he doesn't care, so it's not a teruvais. So the kolabola yoda, the yoda, is mutter because it's not a teruvais. But our case, where all the cakes are mixed up and you want to separate them, why is that a ma'aser bayra? And indeed, the overwhelming majority of poskim hold that kol ha'bola yoda is a ma'aser bayra. And the reason, the biggest raya is you're taking one from the other and you're ending up with a wonderful end result. That's why our laundry, for example, should be a ma'aser bayra. It's a tikkun and a ma'aser bayra. To put it simple, bayra is lav dafka selecting or sorting. It is separating. And the chayra, the biggest raya that this is asa is the poskim discuss bayra in great detail. There are terim, for the marshal, the Mordechai asks, why is it mutter to peel an orange, even to eat it right away? You're taking the bad from the good. You're taking off the peel. So my Mordechai, if there's no way, other way of doing it, that's derech achila. Oh, so we see, we're comfortable. If there would be a het of kol ha'bola yoda, it applies to so many cases. To mixed up silverware, mixed up cake, toys, clothing. Why don't we find any mention of that? The Mishnah Berurah and Sif Katan Tezvav struggles. You come to a Shalom Zacha, you put your coat down in the back room. When you're about to leave, you realize that there are 37 people that, like you, also put their coat in the back room. Now your coat is buried someplace in a pile. So he struggles. What's the heta? So he has a new heta of siluk. Why say the heta is kol ha'bola yoda? So the Machzor Eliyahu says this, but the truth is many poskim say it. But he says it clearly in Siman Memtes. People have this preconceived notion that kol ha'bola yoda is mutter. It's not true. It's bayra deraisa. You're separating with a ma'aser bayra. And he proves that Ayin Sham, one of the rayas, he says, Grada, is from our Gemara Rabibi. Rabibi had to scatter the fruit. That's not a very nice way of a welcoming guest. Why didn't Rabibi take kol ha'bola yoda? So he says that basically kol ha'bola yoda is not a heta. And he says, I know people might think it's a chiddush. So when I was in Eretz Yisrael, I went to both Rabbi Yashiv and Rabbi Shlomo Zalman, and they agreed that she ain't sad heta b'davar zeh klal. And there's a beautiful tshuva l'hayras nasan chelik yud simim aleph the Shmira Shabbos and Gimel Pei Hey the Orcha Shabbos, that basically kol ha'bola yoda is not a heta because you're doing both a ma'aser bayra of sorting one from the other, even though you're not targeting one from the other, and a teitzah. I must mention that in Kaivet Halachas, the Shmuel Kamenetsky Seif and in Chelik Beis Amud Kuf Nun Dalet, he quotes Rabbi Yankov, his father Rabbi Yankov, that held that kol ha'bola yoda is not a ma'aser bayra, and he compares it to scattering. And he says that the bayra is mavchen umevar min ataruvais, to take a specific one, but kol ha'bola yoda by definition is not a ma'aser bayra. Now, he says, Reb Shlomo Zalman said it was asa. He says, not true. Shlomo Zalman said it's mutter. Because in Shmira Shabbos Gimel Pei Hey, Shlomo Zalman holds you're allowed to wash silverware that are all different types, all mixed up, and put them away in their place. Why? Obviously, because kol ha'bola yoda is mutter, you're taking one at a time. But the truth is, it's not a kasha. It's not a right for that halacha. Because there, you're first taking it out to wash it. That's mutter to take out of one to wash. Once you have it in your hand, you're not mechuyev to toss it back in the taruvais. So the taking out to wash it is not bayra. That's why it's mutter. But Lamaisa, I must tell you that I found another from the Gdolei HaPaiskim that seems to hold Kol Abal Yoda is a heta. Rav Voznan Chelik Yud Aleph, Simon Tzadik Aleph, was asked by the Rav of the Kaisel. He says, on a busy day, Shabbos a busy day, we have stacks of Svarim, Chumashim, Sedurim, Tehillim, Gemaris. What do I do? After a few hours, there's no Svarim left on the shelves. So Rav Voznan writes back, it's a pshut I have for you. Take Kol Abal Yodai and put it back in its place. Now wait a second, you're talking about a taruvais of Svarim. And one is different than the other. You can't use a tillim for laning, and you can't use a siddur for laning. So obviously, I'm not saying anyone is a psoilus, but they're different. So he says, Ve'ein bezeh srach boira. So we have this following conclusion in the very basic question of Kol Abal Yodai, which is a little better than miyun because you're not targeting any specific min. Rabbi Yankiv and Rav Vozla seem to be makel. It's not a ma'aser boira like scattering. But most paiskim hold, what do you mean? If you have a mixture and you take out one after the other, that's also a ma'aser boira. And since it's definitely a toitzah, that should be us. Now, I'm not going to be machriya, but I will tell you one thing, most paiskim are machmir. But more than that, and this is the guiding force in Hilchos Boira, the Trumas Hadesh, one of the earliest achrayim in Siman Nun Zayin, discusses what in his times was common. There were a tray of different types of fish lined up one next to the other. Now, we don't do that today, but we have the same thing by trays of cake, by a kiddush, or trays of kol cuts by a simcha. And he wants, and they asked Trumas Hadesh, is there a problem of boira of separating, let's say, the roll cake from the layer cake? It's laid nicely one next to the other, but it's a full tray. So the Trumas Hadesh, talking about fish, but who didn't cake, he says a very strong lashon. Ma'oid keneged svaras halev, that two minim shenik b'harfradosam, two minim that are so different should be boira, because it's not a teruvais. So therefore, it's a shaila. But since the smag says a boira psoyev teich oichel is chayev chatas a deraisa, so I cannot be makel unless I have a raya brewer, which I don't have. So look at the Yirah Shemayim, look at the Yireh Hayra of the Trumas Hadeshim. He says it's unthinkable to say it's boira. But if I don't have a raya, I'm not going to play around with an Issa Deraisa. That's a healthy attitude. Someone as great as the Trumas Hadeshim was afraid to make a move on Shabbos unless he knows it's perfectly mutter. So we'll say that, let's review the Yisayidis, that the Issa boira is Tikkun Oichel. Maisa achil is mutter. Ayol is mutter. Pizor, scattering teruvais, is not a maisa boira, is mutter. Miyun is asa, and l'chayr kol abal yada is also asa. Now let's apply this more specifically. I'll start with an interesting shayla. Someone has a cluster of grapes, and he knows halacha, he wants to eat grapes. Fine, take the good from the bad, eskazun to hate. But he's a shlamazel, and he didn't know that the grape looked good, but most of it was rotten. Now he takes it out. He says, "Oh, it's a psoilus. What do you do now? Does he have to eat it because the ma'isa? Otherwise, he took psoilus teichaychel." So the answer is relax. First of all, if it's slightly edible, part of it's edible, so then it's mutter. It's not a psoilus. In Shinyo Test Sif Yud, the Mechaber says you're allowed to strain water if you would drink it without the straining, because it's not a psoilus. It's edible. But even let's say the grape was totally rotten. You took it out as a ma'isa achila. Just like you can't change from a rotten grape into a good grape, you can't change from a ma'isa achila into a ma'isa boira. And even if you don't like that svara, I'll tell you what's more compelling. This is not worse than a typical misasek. He picked up something thinking that it was tolush, but it really was mechubar. So misasek is not awesome. So that case is not a problem. He thought it was mutter, fine. In fact, the Sfasemas on our Gemara and the Shmir Shabbos in Ha'ara Yud or Moshe in Shimon Eidesef and Ha'ara Mem both point at the same thing. Let's say a person by mistake took psoilus. His hand went to the wrong place, took out psoilus. It's not an issa. It's not more than a misasek. Now, of course, what you can't do is pick up one at a time and I'll look, whatever it is. If it's oichel, I'll eat it. If it's not, I'll put it to the side. Because since there's more psoilus than oichel, you're risking a suffix boirer. Next question. Someone has a bowl of soup that the child took one taste, I don't like it. He doesn't want to spill it into the garbage because then the soup will leak out. So the minhag is you throw it into the sink, you put it into the sink, the soup goes down, the lakshin and the vegetables remain in the strainer, and then you take that strainer and you put it in the garbage. So we're assuming that the leftover lakshin and the vegetables is not muktzah, it's still edible. But wait a second, we have a very serious boirer problem. You're using a strainer which is a kli boirer. So even if you do eating it right away, it's asa, but kolshkein, it's psilus. Now to say that putting the soup in the strainer is like throwing the fruit is like pizza is wrong. It's not like throwing. You're putting it in the strainer. Yet somebody asked Rav Moshe in Chelik Dalet Siman Ayin Dalet Sif Cotton Dalet this question, and Moshe says, I don't see the shaila. What's the question? What do you mean to ask? And he blibes at the end, I don't see a shaila. But Rabbi said, what? Why is it not a shaila? It seemed like boirer v'kli. But for us, it's mamish masik midvash. Because ikka chasim and aseifa. The issa boirer is a teitzah, a tikkun. There's no tikkun, it's two psilus. And as early as the Pri Megadim, in Mishplei Zav Sif Cotton Yud, he says, Kedarka, very brief, La boirahu psilus mi psilus. And you know, where this is negeya, that I told you earlier in Sif Tezvav. You put an egg onto a strainer to help it work with the mustard. You're separating yolk from white with a kli boira. The teretz is you're not using that egg, you're not eating that egg. It's both psilus. And that's why the Shmir Shabbos, Yud Beis, Yud Zayin, the Tzitz Eliezer in Chelik Zayin, Yud Beis, prove this, that it is psilus, and psilus, there is no Maisa Boira. In fact, someone wrote to Tzitz Eliezer, he heard from a Fruma that before Shabbos takes out the strainer from a sink, there shouldn't be Oivan Boira. So Tzitz Eliezer told him back, he's not really gaining anything because a little lower than the regular strainer, there's another strainer built into the sink. So if it's asa, you can't use the sink on Shabbos. That's not the heta. But what the heta is, he says, psilus and psilus is not a problem. Now someone asked an intelligent question, if you have a table after a big kiddush full of a lot of psilus, you take out the soda bottles to put it in the recycling department, recycling garbage. So really the question is, if you're going to get back the nickel, then you have to worry about oichel. But you're not going back for the nickel. But a little of I saw the Piskei Teshuvos points this out. If Lamaisa, the recycle will end up being used again, he considered that it's an oichel for someone else. But I don't think we're doing it for Yenim. I think we're doing it not to get a ticket, if anything. So I think that as long as you're not going to claim that refund, then Avada, it's okay. Consider question, common question. You're given the job at Friday night, take out the challahs for the day Suda, they're in the freezer, take them out, so we'll have them ready for the next Suda. Now, you open the freezer door, and it's nish good. You look at the freezer, it's mamish, like a taruva she'ein dugmasa. To find the chal in the freezer, you have to say Amr Rabbi Yaman 10 times to find it. A real taruva. Now, if your freezer not like that, so kol hakavod. I'm talking about the challah is someplace in the freezer, nisarev she'ein mo. The question is it mutter to take out from the freezer, the chal that you need for the Suda? L'chayr, it's not la'alta. You're not using it. You'll take it out 2 hours before the Suda and enough time to defrost it. So Rav Shlomo Zalman and Shmir Shabbos and Gimel Reish Chav Beis is not convinced that that's la'alta. La'alta means you have to take it out enough time to prepare it, to get it ready. You peel eggs, you're allowed to do it before the Suda, you peel vegetables, but you're not preparing it, it's defrosting on its own. So he has this big chiddush that you have to take it out before you either use it or work on it. And with a frozen challah, there's no heta. But most places can say, why do you look at it like that? Why don't we say that la'alta is the time you need to prepare for a Suda? Like if you have a big oilam, so you're allowed to prepare a half hour before the Suda. So if you need 3 hours for the chal to thaw out, to defrost, so what's the li'alta? 3 hours. And that's what I think the minhag ha'olam is. Take it out at night for the next day, probably is too early, but the time you need for the chal to defrost. But the emes is very hard to be mishaya. Eitzah taiva kamashman, it's a good eitz to get used to. You know that every Shabbos morning, right now you're giving a job, taking out challah from the freezer. So before Shabbos, take the challah from the dark recesses of the freezer, put it in the front of the freezer or on the freezer door, a place that is no longer nis arev, and then you can take it out whenever you want. Because if it's not teruvais, it's not boyer. Okay, someone asked me, is it an eitzah? He sticks his hand into the freezer, and without moving any psilos, he could feel with the challah, and then he'll take it out. I told him, you're right. You're not moving psilos from oichel, but you're still taking out the oichel if it's not la'alta. So you're back to the same shaila, you're not gaining much. But one thing is true. If someone has a whole drawer of different items, all mixed up, so to take out the psilos is a problem. But if he puts his hand into the drawer without moving the psilos and finds the thing that he needs and takes it out, so that would not be a problem of boyer. Boyer is taking away the psilos, not moving it. I'll give you another mashal. I'm not saying this is very appealing, but let's say a person has a piece of dirt, a hair, or bug in a soup. So there's a whole chiddush of the taz, if you're allowed to take out the bug with a little bit of soup, but he has a bad eitzah. He blows the psilos to the side and eats from the other side. Don't bother me, I won't bother you. That's not a bad eitzah, because he didn't perfect the taruvais. It's still a taruvais of psilos and eichel. Moving psilos to the side, but if it's still taruvais, is not a ma'aseh boyer. But again, in the case of things that a person knows he's going to need on Shabbos, eitzah taiva erev Shabbos, put it on the side, it won't be a taruvais. Another important halach to mention is the women want to go to shul Shabbos morning, but you have to set the table before you go to shul, because you can't set the table after you come home. So you have to realize that setting the table could involve a boyer issue. Why? Let's say the dishes, the cutlery were washed Friday night, and they're all in the sink drainer. So now all the silverware are in taruvais. To take one out and set at the table with this one you don't need the soup spoon, you need the fork, you need the spoon, whatever it may be, but taking from a mixed up cutlery that's not being used right away, not la'alta, is boyer. She wants to go to shul, but that's not la'alta. You can't turn non-la'alta la'alta. So the eitzah is, we'll soon see a possible eitzah, but basically, to set the table, you have to make sure there's no boyer. Now, just as obvious is if the silver are in the drawer, you have enough to use for Shabbos day without washing, and you open the drawer, there's knives and forks lined up separately, that's not a taruvais. That's not even the case of Shum Sadeshen, each one is separate. So you could set the table whenever you want, because if it's not a taruvais, it's not a boyer at all. Now I'm going to ask you a very important question. Let's say the woman wants to go to shul Shabbos and set table before she goes. But all the silverware used. So the question is, take one piece of silverware from in the sink, and you have to wash it, right? Wash one at a time. Take any one randomly. Wash it, and don't toss it back into a taruvais. Put the forks on one side of the counter. Take the next one. Oh, a knife. Put that knife in a different area. Wash one at a time randomly, and put each one back in a different area. So what you're doing is, you're starting off beheta of washing dishes, which is mutter. No, there's no boyer in washing dishes. And you're not remaking a taruvais. Would that be mutter? It's a kala baliyade beheta, but you end up, l'chayra, making boyer. But the truth is, you're not ending up making boyer. And that's why the Maghaz Eliyahu himself, who has a beautiful tshuva that he feels kala baliyade is a malacha deraisa, in the next tshuva, Siman Nun, he says, but this is perfectly mutter, because there's no ma'aseh boyer at any given time. Taking out a kala baliyade to wash, you're not taking it out to separate. You're allowed to wash dishes. So don't put it back in a teruvais, put them separately. Using the hizdamnus of taking it out beheta and keeping it beheta. Now, avada, if someone didn't do that, washed and put them all into a pile of dishes or cutlery, then you recreated the teruvais. Now, if someone didn't think, put the silverware into a common bowl, now it's all mixed up, and they very much want to go to shul, there is another eitzah. Take the teruvais and scatter on the table. Now don't miss, if it goes on the floor, you have to wash it again. But you have to have a big table, or take a group at a time, scatter it, put it on the table, and set it up, and then more, and scatter it. If you're using the eitzah of pizor, that would be a good eitzah. The next question is, we began with, the pile of laundry. So it's a taruvais of different meaning, a real boyer deraisa. But you want to just fold it up and put each one in the drawer because you want to be covered Shabbos. You know, it's really, there should be a hachana problem in folding laundry. Why is not a hachana? Because you're not doing it after Shabbos. You have a small house. You don't know where to put the basket of laundry. So you can put everything in the drawer, and it's for now. So let's assume it's not a hachana. But why isn't it boyer? So it's interesting that maybe this is the same heta. I'm picking one out at a time, kolabal yadi, to fold it, not to sort it. Once I have the socks in the undershirt in my hand and I folded it, I'll put it in the right drawer. In other words, we're making it into two steps. Folding and then putting away. So just like washing and putting away is okay, maybe folding and putting away is okay. But the emphasis, many poskim say that that's wrong. Because step one of putting in the drawer is folding it. So washing dishes and putting it separate is okay. Because washing is distinctly different than boira. But folding laundry is two halves of a whole. You fold it and you put it away. So folding is part of the ma'isa boira. But I must tell you, the Machzor Eliyahu, who's mekel, he's mekel even by picking up, listen to this, picking up from a teruvais of wet cutlery that are all together, picking up one and drying it and putting it on the table. Because even drying it is a heta. Now, if drying is a heta, it's looked at an independent ma'isa, and I think certainly laundry. Folding is a heta. Now you want to put it in the right place, why not? So although some are mefakbek with folding laundry because it's considered part of boira, but we do see those that are mekel, the Shmir Shabbos and Gimel Peites is mekel by folding laundry as well. Evidently he felt you're dividing into two actions. Folding laundry is okay, and putting in its place is no longer taruvais. The best eights, of course, is put away before Shabbos. You avoid the achana, perhaps, of the issue of achana, and also a boira. Next question, and is when you have a lot of children or grandchildren, and it's toys all over the place, and it's partially can be dangerous when people trip on toys on the floor. So no doubt about it, if there's a teruvas of toys and you separate them, that's boira. Kolabala yada is not a heta. So the truth is, the best eitzah is sweep everything to the side, make a bigger teruvais till after Shabbos, and to leave things around, people trip and it's not safe. Move it to the side, and it's safe. And after Shabbos, after Shabbos, we wash the dishes, and we look at the mail, and we clean up the teruvais. But don't forget that Shum Zadeshin's approach, toys is a very much a potential teruvais situation. So basically, we have to make sure that we don't have from a teruvais into a boira situation. People have a shayla, they have a stack of plates after the Suda. Big plates, the smaller plates, the fish plates, and they want to put it into the dishwasher. Now, first the question is, why isn't that boira? Keep it where it is. But that already, the place can say, I don't want to keep it out, it's unsightly, and sometimes there's not a good smell. So I put it in the dishwasher, out of sight, out of mind, so it keeps the smell away, it keeps the unsightly appearance of the dishes. But Dr. Moshe, in the very last tshuva, in Chelik Dal Siman and Dalid, if you have a mixture of different plates, different sizes, that's a teruvais. And you're putting the smaller plates in the smaller compartment and the bigger compartment. So besides achana, it's also boira. Now this is not psoilus from psoilus, everybody's saying. Why? Because the plates you're going to use. It's not like down the sink. You're going to use the plates. You're going to use the small plates and the big plates. So this is a boira and perhaps achana. So, of course, the eitzah toiva, chacham ein b'roisha, when you clean the table, take all the plates, the big ones, and put them in one pile. That's min echad. Then you could put it in the dishwasher as it is. Then you have the smaller plates, the medium plates. As long as it doesn't become a teruvais, there's no problem of boira. The issue is when you have a teruvais situation, then separating is a problem. Now, the right way to do it is take a few big plates, put it in the dishwasher in a place that it fits in, and after Shabbos, put each one in a separate rack. To put l'chatchila each one plate in a separate area, l'chayr is unnecessary for Shabbos, and that should be done after Shabbos. As I told you earlier, toys, laundry, it's all the same question. It either could be mutter or chalila could be a malacha deraisa. The best eitzah is either before Shabbos clean up, or on Shabbos keep it don't let it become a taruvais, or best thing is move it to the side and then do it after Shabbos. As far as cleaning a table after the Suda, so typically in a normal civilized home, even though Baruch Hashem is a big oilam and there's a lot of food a lot going on the table, but if you look at it, it doesn't give it the perception as a taruvais. Now again, it's very hard to give a klal, but let's say you have cups and there's a piece of bilkula and there's a bencha, but if it doesn't look like a balagan, it doesn't look like a taruvais, then probably it's not a taruvais. Now again, it's hard to give a klal, but the Aruch Shabbos assumes on a family Shabbos table after the Suda, it's not a taruvais. No, if it's not a taruvais, it's not boirer. Le'idach gisa, I'm in a camp, in a yeshiva. If you have like my camp, we have kind of a big oilam, so we have like 14 barcham on a pretty small table. The table, after the Suda, looks like a bomb hit it. A real taruvais. So if it's real taruvais, so you have to act differently. But I'll tell you the specific shayla we had. In our camp, everything's disposable, so it's very easy. You don't have to clean up. You just throw the whole thing in the garbage. But the problem is that some place in this taruvais, there's a salt shaker. He has to take out. You have to use it for the next Suda. And he can't find it. So that's pretty good indication it's a taruvais. So what's the heta? He's using it for the next Suda 6 hours later. That's not la'alta. I told him, I'm not even sure it's an eitzah, but if you want to eat some salt now, but even that's a harama, which the place is not a good idea. So I told him, he said, what's the heta? So I told him what Rabbi Yashiv once said in a similar situation. Wer sagt der heta fa'alt? Who says the heta for everything? If you have a taruva situation, if it's not la'alta, who says the heta? I'm not a dial heta. So maybe again, chacham eina b'roishai. You keep the salt shaker on the side, not a taruvais. But again, if you're talking about a taruvais and it's not la'alta, what kind of heta could there be? So this is the same klal in any situation of cleaning up. Now, again, I'll give you another dugma. A person's a Baal Simcha and he wants to make it a covered Shabbos and a cover to the Orchim. So every so often he goes to the table and cleans up all the cups that were used and the napkins and the plates that were used. So it's presentable for the next wave of guests. Now think about that. If the situation is a taruvais, so what are you doing? You're taking the psailis from Eichel. Even la'alta is asa. Now again, the Paiskim are very skeptical to give a klal, but it's really telling a perception. Is it mixed up or is it separate? But again, the nerler agleinu is that Trumas Hadeshin. Mitzarechad ma'oid keneged svaras alev to say it's asa, but I don't play around with the rices. So really, if the Baal Simcha should try to do it more often, taking away the psailis, before it becomes a balagan, where that's a situation of taruvais. But again, there's no klal, but the best eitzah would be to try to avoid somehow the situation of a taruvais. I'll give you another dugma, but it's all the same idea. Someone asked me once, he has a plate after someone finished eating, so there's some bones, a little leftovers, and there's the cutlery, the silverware are still in the same plate. So he wants to throw out the leftovers, but not the silverware. Is that boira? He's not using the silverware now, so he's taking the good from the bad, that's not la'alta. But that logic dictates that's not a taruvais. You see, when you have cakes, different cakes lying one next to the other, that gives the perception of a taruvais. But a silverware in a plate with a bone and a little bit of vegetables and maybe a piece of kugel, it's just not a taruvais. It's the tray of cakes or fish, different type of fish, gives the perception that it's different cakes mixed up. But this is very different, very, very distinctly different. So that's probably why the minig oilams, we do take off the silverware. We're not going to use it right away, but we consider it's not a taruvais. For example, another mashal, someone served their main course, and he doesn't want he's not going to eat the vegetables or the kugel, whatever it is. Before he starts, He said, please take off my plate, I don't want this, and put it back. I didn't touch it, untouched, you can still use it. Is that boira? For him it's psilus, right? Is that boira? Well, you have to see. I mean, if he went to one of these buffet kiddush and there's 100 types of carrying and he takes a small plate and he puts it on a small plate, gewalt, that's a teruvais. But in a regular portion, I think each thing is different. Now, if he wants to be a shtickle of a lamdin, he'll say he knows his brother Yossi loves kugel. Because Yossi, I'm giving you a piece of my kugel. So he's taking the oichel to give his brother. For his brother, that is. See, some say that's also a heta. He's taking out what he doesn't like, but he's giving it for his brother. So for his brother, that would be an oichel, and that would be okay. Now, some question that, but no doubt about it, if it's not a teruvais, then it can't be a boira to begin with. The question we began with, the layers of cake, trays of cake with different layers of different cakes. So again, that the Trum Sadeshin already discussed, the Mechaba quotes it, that is typically considered a teruvais. So to separate it, even though it's all oichel and oichel, that we have the case of either miyun or kolabol yadai, which is a problem. Now, le'idach gisa, if most of the cake is gone, it's just a few scattered pieces. No, if it's not a teruvais, it's not a teruvais. I'm not saying the xeris akosiv, that trays of cake is teruvais. It depends on the perception. The Baal Simcha that wants to take out some of the unappealing half-bitten cakes, that's p'sayos v'teichaychel. The better eitzah would be, it takes a little more time, take the good cake off the tray and put it on a different tray. Because you're taking the oichel and leaving the p'sayos behind. Now, svarim is something that unfortunately presents a very sad situation. I'll explain. Avodah is a mitzvah to learn on Shabbos, and typically taking svarim from a shelf does not involve boy, and I'll explain. Let's say you have a shas. So, laimi boy, if the shas is in order from aleph to chaf, now it's more than chaf, rather shas and chalakim of shas. So, if you have him aleph to chaf, so it's very masud, there's no taruvais. So you could take out Friday night, let's say, I'll give you a good mashal. Someone wants to learn Shabbos morning, the Masech Ksubis. But Shabbos morning, his anikel sleeping in his study. So he doesn't want to go Shabbos morning before he learns, take out the Gemara so it's la'alta, because he'll wake up his anikel. So Friday night, he takes out the Masech Ksubis. The question, it's not la'alta. You're not using it till tomorrow morning. So the real heta is, it's not a teruvais. Each Masech is separate. Now, even if it's not an order, but this is Ksubis, and this is Sanhedrin, and this is Yivamis, so even though it's not an order, the Pais can say if each one is labeled identifiable, it's not a teruvais. Now some hold if it's not an order, maybe it is, but I think we could be soymech on that each mesechta on the shelf is in its right place, is not a problem. But the big problem, the painful problem I should say, is when the Gabbai Svarim or anybody actually looks at a pile of Svarim on the tables. Some are going this way, some are going that way, horizontally, vertically, a terrible bazoyin of svarim, agav. But besides that, it's a teruvais. Now, why is that worse than on the shelf? Well, take a look. On a shelf, you could see. Here you have to bend your neck, but one sefer is the other direction, and one sefer the binding is not so clear. Svarim on the place is not a teruvais. Svarim on a pile on the table. So the Chashavas puts it beautifully on a place that's oimim mekaymai, but in the pile is a teruvais. So now what do? So if you need a sefer and you know what you need and you know which of the piles it is, you take it out from the pile. That's fine. But let's say a person that cares about other people wants to put back svarim, so there's enough sedurim or chamashim or gemaras. Everybody's learning the same daf yomi. You have to put it back for the next person. So he's putting it back for someone else, but not for now. So ironically, he's putting back in Mishtabur Hilchas Shabbos, and he's being Mechal Shabbos with that. If it's a Taruvais, which is very sad. So besides like the Allah Sani, the Chavrach Savid, and Haftach Kemoicher, Baron says, if you don't put back Svarim, you don't get schar for the mitzvah, and the Stipe calls it Midas Achzarius and Resha. Besides all that, it's Lifnei Iva. To make a pile of Taruvais, which is Boira, is a very serious problem. So that's why we have to always put back Svarim. Now, someone asks, but I use so many Svarim, it's already a Teruvais. So I told him, you know what the real eights is? When you use it, take it out, use it, and don't just put it back in a Teruvais, put it back on the shelf. Because someone else might use it. Or you could take a few Svarim at a time, let's say you put on your hand 3 svarim. You could even lay it out on your hand that it's not even a pile, so it's not a teruvais. And then you can put each one back even for later use. In other words, put back svarim, that's number 1. Number 2, how do you put it back? By avoiding a teruvais and putting each one back in the right place. Rabbi Shlomo Zalman is quoted in Shmir Shabbos with a big chiddush, but he's in Gimel Reish Lambetes. He says that the second half of learning a sefer is putting it back. I think what he means to say that there's no boira, because the part of learning is putting back the svarim, and that's just putting it back to its place, and therefore there's no issa boira in putting back svarim. Now, I think what he means to say is you're not doing it for someone else to make boira for later. You have to put back your svarim. What's going to be with boira? Boira la'alta is mutter, and this is considered la'alta because I have to put back my svarim. That's my duty. And not all agree to that. But one thing I will say, if we put them back in a timely manner, that would avoid problems. Now, someone asked me, I thought it was a go'aynisha einfall. He has a pile of svarim, very dismaying. The shelves are empty, also very disturbing. So he wanted to make a shidduch. So he took the pile of svarim as it is, and he put it into the shelf. So now you have all the svarim lying, labeled nicely. So maybe he put it back without making a boira situation. I hope that sounds familiar. Who was the first one who thought of that? Rabibi, Atazai. Isn't this a case like Rabibi? You're taking a teruvais, not scattering, putting it onto the shelf. But if you hold on the shelf is not a problem of boira, teruvais, so you beat the system. And I told him he's right. The only problem is that like Rabbi Yashiv, and those that hold that there's no heta of scattering, this wouldn't be mutter. But he's definitely right that would be an eitzah as far as avoiding boira. Now, here I must mention, Rav Vosner was one of the Gdolei Hadar. Rav Vosner held pashut, putting back svarim, kalabali yadai, is not boira. Because he's going with his yisayid of kalabali yadai. So it can't be worse by a pile of svarim. But it's very modern to rely on something which is such a cooler that most poskim don't accept. So, Lamaisa, if someone could do it, again, it's a little difficult. What could also be an eitzah, take one seif at a time and open it and learn a little bit from it. So then you're making it la'alta. Now, even though we said earlier that haram is not a heta, that's true by things that really make no sense. But learning Torah, every var Torah is that would be a legitimate haram. But to expect the gabbai to do that, every sefer to open up, is not fair. And let me leave you with a beautiful shaila. I'm still not sure about the psak, but let's discuss the shaila. And the yeshiva that I'm in, they have this shaila every Shabbos. Baruch Hashem, they're b'nei Torah, Elocha b'nei Torah, and before you go to sleep, you pay your negavasa, you take the tepel and the shissel, and you pay a negavasa for the next morning. The way it is in a yeshiva, in a big yeshiva, you have to stack the cups and the basins, the tepel and the shissel. You can't have each cup lying around, it takes too much room. So you could have literally 20 cups, washing cups, one stacked into the other, and 20 basins, also one on top of the other. And either the same color or they look alike. Bekitza, it's a teruvais. 20 cups stacked one into the other, you're not even sure which is yours. So the shaila is, someone else's cup is not mine. I'm not saying it's teruv, it's psilis, but it's not mine. I'm not going to be shel shalai midas. I can't use his. So the question is, let's say I locate my own, but it's part of a teruvais. So I take it out Friday night to fill it up. When am I going to use it first? Tomorrow morning. When is the achila, quote unquote? When is the alta? Tomorrow morning. Baruch, don't get up la alta. That I could tell you. So when is the alta? Tomorrow morning. So how could I take out? I'm making 2 boiras, one on the tepel, one on the shista, one on the cup, one on the basin. So someone said, no, la'alta is to fill it up now. But that's a toyis. What's the heta of la'alta? What's exercise? Because you have to do it, so you do it. The heta is you're using it. Filling an egavas shissel is not the use. The use is washing. I told him what you could do is, after you change into pajamas, use a cup. After make yatsa, use the cup then. Take it out then to use it, and then you can fill it up. But to say the use is filling is wrong. So someone else said, "No, but especially al pi chassidus, part of going to sleep is preparing the negavasa now. So maybe the use is now. To one tachas is now. Taka the Piskei Tshuva says such a svara, but it's hard to accept because really the part of the Inyan is to have for tomorrow. So I told him either you could make the eights of Pizur, don't throw the cups, you're going to break it, but somehow separate it without separating. But a better eights is Kol Yisrael Reivim Zelazeh, let the accepted, how minig is, you could use anybody's cup. Once there's no kapeda, then all the cups are min echad, as mutagot, and talk to you.
Shame Egan tell like a big shekach to Smith for today's shir. Like to big shekach to the sponsors of today's shir. Or Vom Shechatovitz Li Nishmas Imoy. Yishadina Basha Beisel Shalom Yotzeit Chov Beis Tevis and Ishposel Tzur B'Tzarachayim. Like thank Mr. Yitzchak Stern sponsoring today's shir Li Nishmas Oviv Rabbi Chil Tzvi Bar Moshe Arya Levi. Today's shir was also learned Lili Nishmas Ksav Seifers Zatzal Rav Avrom Shmuel Ben Yamin Ben Moshe Zatzal. Like the yard side today, there's Tikkun Lili Nishmas by the middle of the shul. Baisel, I'd like to remind you today's beginning of Shavim. Egan Shir Torah put out the Luach Hazara, the halachas. Again, the Shavim, it's on the Bima, especially Sofa this year for Shavim Tat. But we'd like to have a chelik in the tens and thousands of shiurim throughout the world, organized by Egan Shir Torah, 100,000 or more. Contact one of the Askanim or email ist@yeshivanet.com or call 718-851-8651 to have a great chelik in this mitzvah Abbas Torah the Rabbim. After Kaddish, Smith will say a seekum of today's shir. Chananya ben Akashem, Merotzak Kadosh Baruch Hu Lezakis Es Yisrael Lefikach Hibelam Torah Mitzvah Shenem Al Noy Chofes Aman Tzidka Yagdol Torah V'Yader.
Hey! Hey! Amen.
Right. Okay, everybody, so you know the Sikkim is unavoidable. The Sikkim for unavoidable Shabbos questions are Smith.
This one, Chazal, what we learned today, Bez Hashem. First of all, Boira is an unusual malacha. Either it's mutta or daraisa, and many gedolim have said the challenge of it, so it has to be learned properly. But basically, the klal is that Boira is not getting rid of the psailis per se. It's tikkun oichel. That's why it's a malacha tzricha legufa. And either, as we said, it has to be a taruvais and two or more minim. But basically, once you have a taruvais Boira situation, the heta would be either to be mafazerit, to scatter them, throw the keys or the silverware until they're distinctly separate. Miyun, which means separating oichel from oichel, is still the maisa boira, and even kol habaliyadu, although they're makilim, but most poskim hold that it's also a form of boira, both the maisa and the teitzah. A person that took a spoiled grape, a spoiled oichel by mistake, doesn't have to eat it. It was a derech achila. Throwing soup with pieces into a sink strainer, although it's a keli, is considered psoilis and psoilis, but there is no boira. Challah from a freezer should be taking out la'alta as close as possible for the Suda. Better would be to arrange it before Shabbos, that it shouldn't be a taruvais. When a person has a pile of clothing, or he wants to make a pile of clothing for the child, or a snack for the child at night for the next morning, if it's taruvais, then it's a problem of not la'alta. Even though the woman wants to sleep late, that doesn't make it la'alta at night for the next morning. So the eight is do before Shabbos, or take clothing that there are not a taruvais. Setting the table for the next suit is not la'alta, and if it involves boira of the cutlery, it can't be done unless it's samach l'suda. If all the cutlery are in separate compartments, it's not taruvais. Not taruvais is not a problem. Washing one dish at a time and putting it back each in their own compartment is fine, because the heta of washing takes away the issa of boira. Many poskim hold the same is true with drying the dishes and even folding laundry. Those cases would be considered a ma'aseh heta that avoids boira. The attitude of Trumas Hadeshen is precious, that unless we know it's muta, we have to treat it as a safek deraisa. So it's hard to give klalim, but cleaning a table hopefully is not a teruvais. Game pieces, toys are typically yet teruvais, yes teruvais. Removing psilis from a kiddush, from a shalom zacha, if it's teruvais, then it obviously can't be done. Try to avoid the teruvais situation. After a suda at home is typically not a problem. In a camp, especially looking for a specific salt shaker, that's taka problem. Silverware on a plate is not a teruvais. Taking one of the part of the main course and giving it back, if it's not a teruvais, is not a problem, even though you're taking psayos of oichel. Separating layers of cake, cold cuts, should be considered a teruvais and is only muta la'alta, which typically is not. Svarim on a shelf are not considered teruvais. On a pile is considered teruvais. So put back svarim, please. Cipher yenim, cipher oneself. Taking a sefer from a teruvais, but for immediate use is fine. Putting the pile into the shelf and making it ois teruvais is the case of pizur. And the negavas is a problem. We have two possible eitzes, either if you're not makbid or if you somehow make a pizur beheta. Yes, Rabbi.